And welcome to the Steve Malzberg Show, everybody. I'm not Steve Malzberg. I'm Joe Concha, filling in for Steve Malzberg for a third consecutive day. That is a personal record. Thank you for being with us on this perfect Friday afternoon in New York City. Quick weather report, 69, sunny, and a little wind coming out of the southwest. Most importantly, the dew point is perfect. Anyway, coming up today on the show, we've got my friend, who put that in prompter, Noah Rothman. He's my enemy, let's face it. But he's the editor of hotair.com and a former colleague of mine at Mediaite, where I write and report on media. Also, Texas Governor Blake Bartenhold will be here as well. And a special interview later in the show that Steve did with Newsmax contributor and political analyst Dick Morris on his great new book that's coming out. Plus, a couple of my Malzberg panels and the best of Give Me Five. So, okay, yesterday we got a pretty shocking news report that Eric Holder was resigning his post as Attorney General. And sure enough, at 4:30, there he was with the president stepping down, but not really because they haven't found a replacement yet. So my next guest is a 5-year veteran of the Department of Justice and has closely been following President Obama's Justice Department, which, can be a full-time job in itself. In fact, he was the whistleblower who exposed racial bias in Holder's Attorney General office. So he is the author of Injustice, Exposing the Radical and racial agenda of the Obama Justice Department. I'm pleased to be joined by Christian Adams. Christian, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, and either title works.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say, I'm so used to saying radical as it relates to Obama, that was just muscle memory. First, obviously, the Holder resignation, not terribly uncommon for folks to start stepping down in a second term. We saw it with Jay Carney a couple of weeks ago. What I find interesting, though, is that they didn't have a replacement ready, and he's going to serve out the term until, not Obama's term, but at least continue in the job until they find a replacement. Did you find that a bit odd that, hey, he's going, but we really don't know who's going to take his place yet?
Well, Holder has wanted to go for a while now. There were rumors he was going to resign before the election, but he's too important to the president, and I think he got talked into staying. Now, with the Senate possibly changing hands, this is their last best chance to possibly get a replacement for Holder who is just as radical as he is. Because after January, there might be a new Senate, and people like Jeff Sessions and Ted Cruz will have a lot to say about who the new Attorney General would be.
One more reason why GOP control of the Senate is such an important issue, as we're less than 2 months now until that election. Let's go to a clip from yesterday of Mr. Holder's resignation. One thing stood out at me that I want you to pay attention to, Christian, when Holder talks about the bonds between he and the president. Let's roll with that.
I want to thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity that you gave me to serve and for giving me the greatest honor of my professional life. We have been great colleagues, but the bonds between us are much deeper than that. In good times and in bad, in things personal and in things professional, you have been there for me. I'm proud to call you my friend. I'm also grateful for the support you have given me and the department as we have made real the visions that you and I have always shared.
And considering that Holder, Christian, is supposed to be the top cop in the nation, that means holding everybody accountable, including the president. Didn't you find the whole bonds between us, best man speech, just a touch heavy for a departing Attorney General?
Well, if you've paid attention to Holder closely the last couple of years, you can read between the lines pretty easily. The vision that we shared, important code word to the progressive base, they're always looking to visions to share and implement. Other things like personal bonds. Holder talks about race constantly, race all the time. And he's been very clear that racial issues, that blackness, this is literally a quote he's carried around in his wallet, that blackness bonds the black man. And when he was asked about it to the Washington Post, he talked about these common bonds. And he said that he shares them even with the black criminal. So there's a racial component to Holder that, if you know how to read between the lines, and sometimes you don't even have to read between the lines with this guy. Sometimes he makes it totally plain that race is the predominant item on his agenda.
Darrell Issa had some nice words for Holder as, as that announcement came through yesterday, saying that he is the most divisive attorney general in the history of the country. Also said he's eroded more confidence in the Justice Department than any attorney general in history. You could say, okay, well, that's just partisan bickering going back and forth. But if you look at the track record, just objectively, you're right in terms of Holder has always injected himself into political arguments, taking on Republicans, going about the race issue that he has. I thought his job was to enforce laws and to be the top cop and not to be a politician. And that's where I agree with Issa, that he was just so divisive because he took a side and ran with it. And I think that's really going to be his main legacy, besides all the scandals, of course, Christian.
Yeah, it's a legacy of lawlessness. But don't forget, he doesn't think that that's what his job ought to be. He doesn't think it's just a top cop. They are very open about how the Attorney General is the centerpiece for implementing a progressive agenda. This is not any kind of secret. When I worked with the Justice Department, it was all about moving the frontiers of the law under the Obama administration. Under the Bush administration, when I worked with the Justice Department, it was about following the law. It was about obeying what the law is. But under Obama, it became very different. It was about moving the frontier.
Christian, we're at the end now almost of Holder's tenure, but sometimes it's best to go back to the beginning when you want to get an overview of everything. And I think the tone was set in 2009. We heard about voter intimidation in Philadelphia as it pertained to the new Black Panther Party. And when Holder was asked if he was going to investigate it, he basically said, nothing to see here, and nothing happened. And despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that seemed to set the tone, Christian, for what we saw for the next 6 years going forward.
Well, of course, that was my case when I worked at the Justice Department. And what is amazing about that case, it hasn't gotten a lot of attention, is after all the dust settled, Holder sat in his office plotting with his henchmen and deputies about how to get rid of my boss, the voting section chief, Chris Coates, who was willing to use the law to protect all Americans, white, black, whatever. And there were complaints by some of his henchmen that this guy wants to protect white people, the Voting Rights Act. And they sat there plotting on how to get rid of this guy. We learned this through the Inspector General report at DOJ. They produced a report that got access to all of the accounts of this meeting. So this is a guy that not only dismissed the Black Panther case on his watch, but then went after people who wanted to enforce the law equally. It's a rancid racialist attitude in this guy's head, and it's going to be better for the country that he's out of government.
Well, that will be happening maybe not this week or next month, but certainly soon. You know, as a media guy, and I write for Mediaite, I cover basically the way the media covers events. And two scandals that really stood out to me, and almost personally, was the Associated Press phone tapping scandal, where all these different reporters, about 200, their phone calls were tapped, were listened to, their phone records were taken. And then, of course, there was James Rosen, who I know over at Fox News, who is as straight a reporter as it comes, covering the Justice Department, very well respected, and yet he was almost followed in a Putinian, if I could, is that a word? Vladimir Putin KGB kind of fashion. This was very disturbing stuff, and again, Holder just let it go.
You got to understand something. These people are all about power. Power is an end in itself to this crowd, to people like Eric Holder. And the government is a natural home field advantage for him. And so none of these issues surprise me anymore. Attacking state election integrity, attacking New York City Fire Department to hire people on the basis of race. Over and over and over again, it's about flexing power. Fast and Furious to attack the Second Amendment using the power of the federal government. Holder is our founder's worst nightmare. He is the man who had corrupted the rule of law to achieve partisan and radical political goals.
You know, and we talk about the media and the Attorney General, and I read a very disturbing article in Business Insider yesterday that talked about, they actually got a quote from Al Sharpton, of all people. He hosts a show on MSNBC at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and Sharpton is quoted as saying, "I will be very, very instrumental in the choosing of the next Attorney General." Your thoughts? I'm sure it's going to be entertaining.
Welcome to America 2014, where a racial demagogue like Al Sharpton, who once stood in front of stores urging people to attack the store, and a guy goes in with gasoline at Freddie's Fashion Mart and sets it on fire
In Harlem, yep.
killing multiple people, is now so close to the White House that he says that he will help pick the next attorney general. That's what this administration is cozying up with. Racial demagogues with defamatory, violent, murderous histories like Al Sharpton.
And low-rated ones, if you look at the daily numbers like I do. So, hey, Christian, thanks so much for being here. Certainly enjoy your weekend. It's going to be 80 and sunny here. I don't know about where you're going to be, but we're certainly looking forward to that. And thanks for the insight. Great job. We appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So before we go, everybody, Steve got a chance to sit down with Newsmax contributor and political analyst Dick Morris to talk about his great new book. And I actually have it right here. There it is. It's called Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. Oh, we even have a full screen of it. Isn't that nice? And I actually, working here, you get this, access to free stuff. So I actually started reading this last night. It's a page turner, and we certainly hope you can get it. And definitely watch that interview later, because Dick Morris, if anything else, is extremely entertaining. And he's been around the game for so long, was in the Clinton White House, and we're certainly glad to have him here at Newsmax. So we're going to be back just in a couple of minutes. We got to let our advertisers do their thing, and we're going to have a Malzberg panel. That's after the break. And again, a great show that we have lined up for you on a Friday afternoon here in New York. We certainly appreciate you being here. Joe Concha filling in for Steve Malzberg on the Steve Malzberg Show, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.